Hello everyone. In the previous lesson that we talked about the production and consumption balance, where we had seen that of as much as we consume is all that we need to produce. We need not go way beyond and cause wastage. And there were ways that we saw that a production and consumption balance can be leveraged and can be used very effectively. We also took a look at case examples of sustainable living, where we talked about some rainwater harvesting, then we talked about kitchen gardening, and we talked about reusing, upcycling of things, involving a little skill in it. And we also talked about clothes recycling, and we talked about waste management. We talked about compost making also, which could effectively help the environment, which could effectively help humans also, which could aid farming, which could secure water and bring about this balance that we look forward to, a balance which is very important for a society to thrive, which is very important for an individual to live well. Now we go on to module 4, and the module 4 talks about introduction to ethical living and professional integrity. So today is lesson 4.1, and the subtopic of ethical living and professional integrity that we are going to cover today is ethical decision making and the consequences of ethical decision making. So let's see what is ethical decision making. Well, ethical decision making is a critical process involving the evaluation of choices against a framework of moral principles and values. And it has a profound and far reaching consequence. Now, when we say that it is a critical process, it would mean that it is important and it is a very imperative process which has to happen. But that process, what does it involve? It involves evaluation of choices, what we choose to work with against a framework. Means a pattern is already set, but then we still have a choice that what we want to fit into that framework or what we want to fit into that pattern. A pattern of what now? A pattern of moral principles and values. A pattern of knowing how to go about, a pattern of knowing how to, what is right, what is wrong, and how to create values. And it is ongoing, it is continuous, like it is not momentary, it is not in a phase, it is momentous. Momentous is something which goes on, which doesn't stop, continues. Every decision, whether personal or organizational, carries potential outcomes, and ethical choices play a pivotal role in shaping those outcomes. So, everywhere we have to make a decision, whether it is for personal, individual benefit or whether it is for an organization, will have its own repercussion. And ethical choices or correct choices play a very important role, because if it is a good choice, obviously the outcome will be good. If it is not so good a choice, the outcome is not going to be good. Let's talk about ethical decision making and what does it include. So, making typically involves a systematic process to navigate morally complex situations with clarity and integrity. How does it work? It just works like a computer flowchart. If you do not have your steps in order, if you do not have important steps there, will a complex situation or will a complex program just unravel or will just solve on its own? No, it cannot happen. We need to have a systematic process, a step by step procedure into how it's going to unravel, in how it's going to happen. Morally complex situations, morally which are difficult for us to decide, difficult for us to adjudge what we have to do at that point in time. But it does make a difference if we are able to decide very correctly Morally, if we are correct, then everything falls into place. Morally, if we are incorrect, things can just go out for a toss. Things may not even work out, leave alone benefit. So, what are these steps that we can talk about? Recognizing the ethical issues, a ethical issue which is there, but we need to have a eagle's eye view also, that we need to understand, we need to comprehend, we need to recognize how beneficial it is, whether it is it or it is not. Gathering facts is very important, because then without gathering the facts, how will you know whether it is right or whether it is wrong? Facts which are related, we cannot just beat around the bush, it has to be centrifugal. Evaluating alternatives, sometimes one plan of action may not be working, it may not work at all, or may not be comprehensive enough for you to make it happen. So we need to look at other alternatives which are more comprehensible, which are more workable, which are more practical, which are more ethical. Making a decision, sometimes we are bound by time also, so we need to decide very smoothly with time, and very correctly also, keeping all ethical aspect in favor, so that we make the correct decision, the decision which is going to be ongoing and momentary and not momentous. Taking action and reflecting. Once we are dealing with a problem, what kind of an action does it require, and how we are going to go about it, how we are going to justify that action that is at hand with us. Now, what is the relationship between ethical choices and the consequences? How do we make a choice, and what is going to happen after we've made the choice? Obviously, something is going to happen, so we will have to stay put and see that what we've done, how further has it gone? Has it made a difference? Was it correct what we did, what we said, what we thought? So, ethical choices are inherently linked to their outcomes. They are imperative. Once you have made a choice, something is going to happen. So, what something is going to happen decides, you are the deciding factor. If you have chosen well, something good is going to be the outcome. If you were unable to decide well, you were unable to choose well, obviously the outcome is not going to be so good. So, here's how it's going to work: responsibility and accountability. So, when we are responsible for taking an action, we are also accountable of what is going to happen. It has to go hand in hand. We cannot be not responsible and then not accountable, or vice versa, accountable and not responsible. It has to be both. We need to be responsible, we need to be accountable. How about trust and integrity? Trust, it's been an ongoing topic. It was paired with respect earlier, and now it is with integrity. So when we have trust, we do have integrity. Here we talk largely about organizations, when there is a common goal that has to be achieved, a common target that has been set, and it has to be gotten to. So if we do not trust each other, will things happen? No, they will not. Integrity, yes, because when we are a larger organization, the boss in turn trusts a subordinate, the subordinate in turn trusts a person working further under him. So it's a long chain. Societal impact, how society treats you, how you treat the society, what all is going on in the society, how it makes a difference, whether it is being talked nicely, whether it is being talked badly, how impactful it is, whether it has a strong impact, whether it is more realistic than fake. Long-term versus short-term outcomes. Then we talk about things which are like goals also, things which make themselves visible within a short period of time, things which make themselves visible in a longer period of time. But then the outcome is there, whether in a short span, whether in a long span. Character and culture do make a difference. How our character enhances the culture, how the culture enhances the character. Okay, so what happens of unethical behavior when we do not follow ethical values, when we do not go by a moral compass, when we just shelf it? Conversely, unethical behavior can have severe and wide ranging consequences. There's so many things which can happen when we don't follow system. Loss of credibility and reputation. Now here we can talk about individual's credibility, individual's reputation, or we can also talk about organizational credibility or organizational reputation. So it is loss of both credibility and reputation. You may lose your face, your standing at your workplace, or a workplace may lose their face and standing in a larger market. So everything gets affected, everything is bound. Legal and financial repercussions. Legal and financial repercussions are very, very difficult to handle. We know that we live in a country with lots of legal binding framework. So if we have faltered the system, if we have gone wrong somewhere, then we are under a legal radar. When we delve into embezzlements, when we delve into money frauds, then financial repercussions. Then when we are not fair, both legal and financial repercussions happen. And legal and financial repercussions go a long, long way. It is not short lived, goes on. Decreased productivity and employee morale, where a person is not valued, where a person is not made to feel important, and that person loses interest, that person loses their posterity to work nicely. So employee morale goes down. People don't want to be as vibrant, as healthy as required in a workplace. So there is decreased productivity, and certainly the person, when he's not feeling right, will not even indulge into too much of work. Erosion of trust. There again we have trust. Trust is a very important factor. Once we said that it is like bone china, it's like a thin cup, that if it is broken, can it be put back together? No, it cannot be. It can do substantial damage to one's character, to one's personality, to anything that is at hand. So the trust is eroded, and it can not be fulfilled very quickly, like with the blink of an eye. It takes a lot of time then. Organizational downfall. How does organizational downfall happen? Well, organizational downfall happens because of loss of credibility, as we read, loss of reputation, as we read, loss of legal face that we saw, loss of legal and financial repercussions when they are there, when we do not know how to handle justly and fairly. Now let's take a quick look at 2 or 3 models of the ethical decision making. How do these models work? What are their benefits? What is the framework? How do their analysis happens? How do they work? So the first that we talk about is the utilitarian approach. It focuses on producing the greatest good and doing the least harm from the greatest number of people. So it is basically utilitarian. Whatever is at hand is used. But then what is happening is that quality is there with no harm or minimal harm. Then we have the virtue approach. What happens at the virtue approach? Ask what kind of person or organization one should be in, focusing on virtues like honesty, like courage, and like compassion. So these are like values that whether they match with your own value system. If you remember, we had talked about journaling, what your value system should be, how you value yourself, how your values can be used. So all that is applicable here. The utilitarian approach in detail. It is an ethical theory that determines right from wrong by focusing on outcomes or consequences. It is a form of consequentialism, means whatever you do comes back to you. Meaning the morality of an action is judged by its results. What you send out, you get back. The core principle of utilitarianism is to produce the greatest good of the greatest number of people. So, a benefit for a large number of people. What are the core principles, core values? Consequentialist, welfareism, impartiality, So this is how a utilitarian approach in action looks like. So we have a comparison of utilitarianism and non-utilitarianism. Let's see who are the stakeholders. The stakeholders are family, friends, company, the community, the society. What are the benefits and what are the harms? How can stakeholders benefit and how can they be harmed by my action? Think about. And what is the goal? Create the most benefit over harm for the most stakeholders. So we are talking about a larger benefit than we talk about any harm or minimal harm. So that is the utilitarian approach which is in action. A quick look at the virtue approach, also known as virtue ethics, is a prominent moral philosophy that emphasizes the development of moral character and virtues in individuals rather than focusing solely on duties, rules, deontology, or consequences of actions. Consequentialism. The key concepts here are virtue, practical wisdom, eudaimonia. So now a small model of virtue approach in action. Right versus the wrong. What are a person's virtues? What are my virtues? What are your virtues? Honesty, loyalty, fairness, courage, generosity. Who do I want to be? Will my action enforce the kind of character I value in myself? Will it make a difference? Am I satisfied? Can I live with my decision and the effect it has? Does it represent me? Is it me whom I'm talking about? Will the virtues of honesty, loyalty, fairness, courage, and generosity reflect? So we need to think. These are the two approaches largely which are used, and we can think about picking any and working on any or experimenting any. So with that, we finished the lesson 4.1. What we talked about was ethical decision making and the consequences. However we choose to decide, however we choose to behave, does come back to us. It is all in front of us. And then ethic versus law. How are ethics important? Do we live by the ethics? What are the different approaches that we had? The utilitarian approach and the virtue approach. Thank you. Yes, tell me.